Hey guys, in this lesson we are going to test our first Bootstrap classes. Let's see if everything we did in the last lesson, including Bootstrap in our theme, actually works. Before testing Bootstrap, let's remember that nothing will work if you don't have the viewport tag in your theme. I added it here in header.php a few lessons ago, you should remember that. If you haven't done this, it's still on time. Just copy this snippet here, okay? Now we can test Bootstrap using this same file, header.php. Well, how does Bootstrap work? To help us understand, let's use an image from the design model website. As we see in this image, in summary, the base of this tool is a system of 12 column grids in which we can distribute the content of the site. The content is centered within a special class called container, whose size varies according to the device that is viewing the content of the site. By default, it starts with a maximum size of 1140 pixels for a desktop computer, for example, and changes in size depending on the device. Each one of these changes is called a breakpoint. Inside these containers, we can have rows, and these rows can be distributed over 12 columns. One important thing is that you don't need to use these rows if a specific part of your layout doesn't need more than one column. If you have more than one column, they should be inside a row. All of these sizes are controlled by CSS classes. That is why we include a specific Bootstrap CSS file in previous lessons. There is a CSS class for the container, for the row, and for the column sizes. We can also define specific column sizes for large, medium, small, and extra small devices. There's a lot more to Bootstrap than that. It is not just made up of containers, rows, and columns. But to start understanding how it works, that's enough. Without understanding those things, you can't even take this first step. So come on, let's see it in practice. Let's create a new div inside the search section and pass the container class to it. And this class called container is specific to Bootstrap. Since we're only going to have one column in here, which is going to be the column that's going to be a search box, we don't need a row. Let's go back to the text in here. And now let's do the same thing for the top bar section. We create the container. But now we need a row because we're going to have that logo column, and on the right side another column where the other elements are going to be. Now let's say that the brand div, where the logo will be, will have a width of 3 columns. We can do this by giving the col3 class. The column to the right side, the second column, will be 9 columns wide. Notice that the sums of all columns within the same row are no more than 12. So 9 and 3 equals 12. An interesting thing about Bootstrap is that these column size specifiers can vary depending on the device being used to display the page. We can have the XL specifier for extra large devices, LG for large devices, MD for medium devices, SM for small devices, and until version 3 of Bootstrap, there was a specifier called XS used for extra small devices. From version 4 onwards, it no longer exists. If you want to say that a column is for an extra small device, just leave out the specifier, just like we did here in these two divs. When there is no specifier for the column class, it means that the indicated column width is valid for any device, from the extra small to the largest possible. That's what's happening here in our code. We are saying that the width of the logo will always have 3 columns regardless of the size of the screen. and the other column will always have 9 columns, from a smartphone to a desktop with 25-inch screen, which today I would say is a big screen. If I want these elements to have different sizes from a tablet, I can do that by adding one more column specifier for each div. For that, I would use the SM specifier. For example, let's say the logo div will have a width of 6 columns starting from the tablet. So we'll have to say that the right div will have 6 columns too, since 6 and 6 equals 12. We can also add some more rules to the CSS file, which will only be used to tell these two areas apart. Let's open the file and add the following lines. Brand, background, green, second column, background, yellow. If we save all the files here and reload the front end, inspecting the theme, I can click here on this button and see how the theme sounds like in the responsive version. Notice here that each of the two divs is taking up half of the screen, until there comes a time when this size changes. This change is the breakpoint I mentioned earlier. This is the moment when we are viewing the page on an extra small device, like the screen of a smartphone, for example. Here the logo div has 3 columns, and the other div has 9 columns. We can see that in the style box. Now we have 3 columns, and as we increase the screen, the same div changes to 6 columns. And it goes all the way to the end because we don't have specifiers for larger screens than that of the tablet, the SM. Bootstrap's grid system from version 4 is designed to follow the mobile-first model. In other words, you start by defining the grid for smaller devices to larger devices. When you use a specifier for the column, Bootstrap applies the size of that specifier from then onwards. Behind it all is the Flexbox technology, which is actually the glue that makes this new grid system work. Flexbox is fantastic. Well, let's delete this test here because it doesn't make sense for the project. As I told you, Bootstrap is much more than that. Throughout the course, you see me using several other classes to build the layout and learning practice. As the course is not about Bootstrap, I will limit myself here to leaving the link of the Bootstrap documentation where they talk about the grid system. You can find this link among the extra materials of this lesson. Well, you can test it yourself later and play with the widths of the other sections and divs of the theme. Now that you know the basics, you can already try to play with index.php and footer.php, which we'll just start to play with later in the course. Well, I hope you enjoyed the way I explained it. I hope it's clear. So, see you in the next lesson. Happy coding!